Jackie, magic must defeat magic.
Bad day, bad day, bad day, bad day.
Jade.
Yes, Uncle?
No, that was Jackie. He was talking to Jade. He was
Yeah,
like,
Jade calls him Uncle Jackie. When was the last time you saw Jackie Chan Adventures?
I thought you were saying Jackie was talking to his uncle.
Nah, Jade's talking to her uncle, who's Uncle Jackie.
Well, that's confusing. Welcome, everybody. I promised last episode I would have a talk.
Hang on, before we go into that, and I don't mean to be rude, but remember that guy in season 2 that replaced Toru on the bad guys team because Toru became a good guy? He had like red hair and he was like a wrestler or something.
Yeah, I think so.
What was his name?
I don't know.
All right.
My memory is pretty spotty.
If anybody knows that guy's name, I can't remember, and I'd like to, and I don't want to look it up, even though I clearly have all the tools available to me. What did you want to talk about, Travis?
So setting the stage. I see. Okay.
Hey, another one.
Yeah, I think we're on a roll.
Yeah.
Let's not pay attention to that. I wanted to bring up, let's talk about, this is a shit game. Mm-hmm. We can both agree on that.
Yep.
Let's talk about good things.
You don't like Hyperdimension Neptunia?
Surprise! Let's talk about things that we do like.
Okay.
I want to talk about things that you and I have been interacting with lately.
Okay.
That have been inspiring us.
Okay.
And I want to bring up, I have 2 things that I've been doing on the side that have been very, very good. And I don't usually get a chance to I don't have many things every year that really get to me.
Sure.
And these are 2 things that I have interacted with that I am just over the moon over. First one is a very, very special game that is currently on sale on the PSN. Everybody should buy it. It's like $2.
Ooh.
It is a game from 1996 called Suikoden 2.
Oh.
And I talked about this a bit with you before. I don't think we were recording.
We were not, but you mentioned it to me.
Mentioned that I had started it.
Yeah.
And I had started it because I heard from some people that it was very unique and special in a way that is not in the same ways, but in the way that Persona 4 is a special and unique JRPG. Or I guess I should say Persona 3, because I kind of set that.
Sure.
That
formula. It's that it's got characters that people love, and you want to keep going back to it, and
it is compelling for reasons that are not usually in JRPGs.
Okay.
Is what I mean by that. Where Persona 4 and 3 are built off of these unique features, and
you're talking about the social link thing.
Just that, the fact that there's the fusions, all of these things come together to this really awesome package. Mm-hmm. So for Suikoden 2 is from an era that I think is very hard to go back to with today's advancements. I mean, a lot of those old games are really dense and really tough and aren't very compelling.
Usually you play them with a FAQ open on your laptop.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily wrong of Suikoden 2 either, but where should I start? Suikoden 2 starts out in a sort of kind of generic way, like you're kind of in some just basic medieval fantasy land. You have, you're a young kid who's maybe 17 or something. I don't know how old he is actually.
Okay.
And you're in an army, and the game sets up that you are betrayed by your nation, basically. And one of the commanders of your own army decides to just take over everybody. He decides he wants to be a conqueror. And the whole game, for the first 15 hours, is basically you on the run. You are going from town to town as they are systematically being taken over or destroyed by this army, and I'm I didn't know what Suikoden 2 was. All I had heard it was good, and at this point I'm like, this is really weird, because usually a lot of these games are about kind of empowerment. They might set up an antagonist from the very get-go, and a lot of them do, but they usually don't push you back like this, and it wasn't because I was doing anything wrong. That's just this setup,
Yeah.
And suddenly, with a snap of a finger, it turns into a cross between Fire Emblem and Advance Wars, where this whole game I had been going through, and it was pretty normal, quick, which was nice, but not very special turn-based battle mechanics. Very, very fundamental.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of complexity. In fact, it even has like an auto button, like Persona does, just where you can have them just attack and you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Then suddenly I was commanding an army in like a battlefield.
And were the mechanics completely different? Or were they...
Completely different.
Wow.
And then I get a castle. And then suddenly I'm recruiting like all of these people throughout the whole country, and every town has like a bunch of people who I have to figure out what their deal is and get them to join me. And each of them has a very special thing, and some of them can join my party when I go out partying. Some of them like start or build things or run things in the castle. So one guy I met, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a chef. I want to help you." And I'm like, "Okay, come with me." And I go back to my castle, and suddenly there's a big restaurant there. And he opened up a restaurant in my castle. And then new music was playing because I had upgraded it. And then I went out again, and there was a girl who like teleported in front of me and was like, "Hey, I'm on the run. I need to go to your place." And I'm like, "Hey, join us." And she joins us, and now I have a way to teleport anywhere in the world. And it's like,
and were those choices? Or
oh yeah, so I was able to say, "No, go away."
Wow.
And I'm finding that the real meat of this game is going through and finding out all of the specific circumstances that get you all of these characters. There are like over 100 characters.
Wow.
And
can you get them all?
Yeah, and they all have different systems. They all have different like requirements. They all have different things they want. Some of them are like mandatory. You have to get them. Some of them are totally off the beaten path. One of them that I got today was a guy. So one of my favorite characters in the game is this guy. I think his name is Richmond, and he's a detective. And he helps you in the story, and then he joins you. He's one of the mandatory characters.
Okay.
And he has his own theme song. It's like this jazzy theme song every time you talk to him. And then he has an animation where he like flips up a coin and catches it. And he's like, "Let me see what I got for you." And then you talk to him, and he's like, he's the guy you go to if you don't know how to get somebody. You can ask him to investigate it for you.
Oh, that's cool.
So he'll come back and tell you like, "Here's a description of this person. What do you need to do to get to him?" And sometimes it's very vague. Like the hardest one I got so far was this guy who was running around a town, and when I asked him to investigate it, all he said was this guy needed a show of speed. And I was like, well, I don't know what that means. So I ended up looking that one up because I also forgot which town he was in. And I'll get to that. That's part of my one of my complaints. But
So, but in the game, I'm just curious for my sake, when he gives you a vague answer, is it, do they do something where he's like, I couldn't get much information on this guy, or is it just like it's vague and you don't understand it?
No, he gives the same kind of tone every time he gives it to you.
Okay.
But most of them so far, the ones that were more essential have been very clear. And usually it's not hard to figure it out.
Okay.
This one guy, though, what I ended up finding on my research was that I needed, to show a display of speed to him, I needed to select run from a battle 50 times. And that is weird. That is confusing. But I think if you played the game long enough, you would do it. You know, it's like Pokemon, where you'll do that enough times. So I just did it a bunch, and then he joined my party. And the cool thing about him is that he makes me walk through the overworld like twice as fast. So by unlocking him, it made the game like way better.
Yeah.
So I love it because everything you do in the game is like building up, and it's, what I think is so compelling about it is that it's almost like this marriage between open-ended like Western RPGs and very narrative-driven, constricted JRPGs.
Do you feel that you need to play Suikoden 1 to
I don't
play
even
Suikoden
know
2?
if they're related. I think they might be because I heard some characters are in both, but I don't think the story
So
is
you
connected.
yourself haven't played Suikoden?
No, I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
This was the first time I had ever like interacted with any of the Suikoden games at all. And they went on through the PS2,
This
but
is
I don't
it's
think...
a PS1 game?
It is, PS1. It's early PS1.
Okay.
And it looks like it. It is basically a Super Nintendo game, which is also part of the charm. I mean,
I could be down with that.
It's sprites, and so it's actually very pretty. The sprites, it's like if Super Nintendo development never really ended, because it's doing stuff with sprites you couldn't do on the Super Nintendo. Like, they interact with each other so much more, and all of them have these, like, very cool animations in battle. So I mean, they had to animate a ton of characters, and I don't know, there's so many layers that I love about it.
It sounds like they took advantage of the extra memory that was saved by not doing polygonal stuff
Oh, basically, yeah,
to make it look nicer.
And again, I think it was because it was so early, they didn't want to kind of compromise the vision by making it all 3D, because I mean, Final Fantasy VII is an ugly game. As far as the polygons go, they are like they are like cubes and pyramids and things like stacked on top of each other. They got better by the end of the PS1. A lot of late PS1 games actually look very good, but yeah, that's great. The only thing I would say that is kind of a downer about Suikoden 2 is that it sometimes, occasionally, better than most JRPGs from this era, it can feel a little directionless because they tell you where to go, but then if I put it down and I come back to it the next day, there's no way for me to ask anybody, hey, where do I go?
Yeah.
And the world is like really big.
So if you don't know where you're supposed to go and you've forgotten, you're kind of lost.
Yeah, and you have to kind of piece it together. I mean, the world, and the world is another issue. If they were to like re-release this, I would want it to be on like the 3DS, because then you could use the second screen as a map, because there are no maps. And that is a big pain, especially in your castle, because your castle is huge and it's basically a big labyrinth.
You can get lost in your own castle.
Yeah, because like people will just... everybody who has a specific task will find a specific spot in your castle to sit. And so if I'm like, I need to find Richmond, where is he? Like... And that's something that they definitely could fix. And I think that that's just a matter of it being the time. And I do think that waiting 15 hours to get to the castle, like, that's really where the game starts. 15 hours is a long time.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like that wouldn't be excusable today. I like that it sets up this narrative of you, like, being trampled on and then turning the tides of battle slowly.
I remember when you first described it to me, you felt like it was kind of... the story kind of felt a little Game of Thronesy. That it was kind of political, or... Yeah,
so it takes place in a fantasy setting. There is magic, there are monsters, but you are fighting a bad dude. You are fighting a Genghis Khan, basically.
He's not like some ancient dragon or something like
that.
He's just a conqueror.
He's a guy, and there are weird things. Like, there was one point where, so to get to the castle was inhabited, and it was inhabited by like a vampire.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of just like kind of faffing about at the beginning, where I was like, some of these missions, I'm like, I think you could have, cut the fat a bit here. And so we kicked this guy. His name was Necklord, which is not a good name. We kicked Necklord out of his castle. And
it's between two really good vampire puns. He's like a necromantic thing, but also he's going for the neck because he's a vampire. There's something there, but they combine him and it's terrible. That Necklord is real bad.
Necklord. Some of the names are a little weird. I think that just came from the translation just not being
probably
very rich. I mean, this was, again, from a different era. But where was I going with that?
Faffing about early missions, it seemed to be a little
yeah,
weird.
And just with the fantasy stuff, it felt I had to get like a magic sword that would talk to me, and that was the only sword that could hurt him or something like that.
Weird.
I don't know. There was a little bit of JRPG nonsense mixed in, but primarily the game. What I was saying the same earlier is that it's kind of like comparing Lord of the Rings, which I would say is kind of like a traditional Final Fantasy, a genre-defining fantasy thing.
Yeah.
And Game of Thrones, which takes that into a more human level.
Yeah.
Whereas Game of Thrones, there is magic, there are dragons, but it's more about the politics of what's happening in this world.
And that's not to say that there aren't characters in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, no.
It's just Lord of the Rings is much more about the pitched fantasy battle scope.
Yeah,
and like that it's establishing these tropes that we know today, that like elves are mystical creatures that live in the woods in castles, and like dwarves are in the mines, and like those things existed before, but like... And
I haven't beaten Suikoden 2. It's entirely possible the final boss will be some giant cloud of evil that says he wants to start a new world. That's possible.
Children of the new potential.
Yeah. This world has sinned. I must make it new.
Ugh.
Thank you, every JRPG ever. That's entirely possible.
It's good to know that you're comfortable with it if and when it rears its head.
But they really do establish that, like, you are trying, almost in like a Mass Effect way, to like go around and get these different city-states to join forces to help you, like, fight this massive army that is just like at the gates of everybody. And you have to like convince them because you are just like some kid. Everybody is like, well, you're not actually the hero. You know, you didn't stop them. You're lying to us. Or they'll be like, I don't know. There's a lot of just cool like twists and turns about what people's allegiances are. It just, I don't
sounds really good.
I am not a big fantasy person. You know this.
Yeah.
It's usually a major turnoff for me. I like it in occasional game circumstances, and this is definitely one of them. Where what it does so well, it does kind of regardless of genre, you know?
Yeah.
And here's another complaint I'll say. I have been in 3 like battles where I am commanding armies, and so far none of them have required really any input from me. So far they've either been establishing a point like to teach me the mechanics, or it was like just a storytelling piece where it was like, oh, this is feudal, you have to run.
Yeah.
You know, they have yet to give me an open-ended way to battle and like with a lot of forces. I'm usually only controlling 1 unit.
And at this point, you're more than 15 hours into the game.
I'm more than 20 hours into the game, and
Wow.
I have only touched that aspect of it. I have a feeling it's going to get way deeper into that, hopefully. But it is a little too bad that it does really take its time to get to that part. You know, you think of like Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem wastes no time.
Sure.
You know, it gives you everything you need to set off onto that gameplay loop immediately. And that's just how games are now, because there are so many games that expecting you to sit through 15 hours of kind of not what the game is, you know,
I remember in Persona 4, I think, had a 4-hour tutorial pretty much.
Yeah, that's true. I do think that, though, the difference between, you know, Persona 4 when it is chugging along doing Persona isn't like drastically different from those first 4 hours. You're still talking to people. You're still going through a little dungeon. You're still fighting a boss at the end.
Yeah.
The only thing you're missing is the conversation stuff and like the kind of mechanical development things you can do.
Yeah.
With Suikoden, it is like a light switch. It is so... Suddenly you are in a management game where you are building an army, and that's what the game is, whereas the first 15 hours make you think it's a linear standard turn-based JRPG.
Yeah.
You know? But to summarize, everybody, it is $2 on PSN or $3, I don't know. It's worth way more than that. I was shocked by how much I was enjoying it. I do not play very many JRPGs. They usually bore me. I usually have to fight myself to get through them. This is one that I am like compelled to play every time.
Well, you're doing a good job selling it. I think I might even pick it up today.
Well, if you have a Vita, works on that.
You can play it on Vita?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
It's Vita, PSP, and PS3. Sadly, no PS4
yet.
Well, I don't know. If
they are definitely going to somewhere down the road start unloading those classic games on the PS4.
I think the reason they're not going to... So they already released Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII on the PS4 is a different version. It is 1080p. It has trophy support.
Sounds like that's the PC version.
Yeah, but I think that they are trying to make it so that... Because if you owned Final Fantasy VII before as a PS1 classic, you had to buy it again to get that version.
Right.
I think they want to make a situation where everybody has to buy it again to get trophies and 1080p. I think they want to optimize everything.
That's not shocking, but that's a bummer.
It's what Nintendo did. They did it with the Wii U and the 3DS. They said, hey, we're adding save states and we're adding replays and whatever.
Well,
buy it
Travis, again. I want to give you a round of applause because, ladies and gentlemen, Travis just talked about Suikoden 2 pretty much by yourself for like 15 minutes.
I'm really jazzed about it. I really like. I'm honestly
impressive.
I'm honestly mad that Sam is here because I can't play it right now.
I'm sorry. We'll get through this as soon as we can, and I'll let you go right back. I mean, hey, I wish I could play Hearthstone right now. And now we're playing
Sacrifices we make for our friends.
Yeah.
Sacrifices for you, Tanner. Goodbye.
I hope you're enjoying, buddy.